Hi, I'm Danny Black, and welcome to the At Sports Vault podcast. On this podcast, I will be talking sports cards, collectibles, memorabilia. I'll be interviewing hobby guests. I will be talking about my own thoughts. I'll cover regular sports that relate to the hobby. That's the fun part. More importantly, I want you along for the ride. So click like and follow for more content, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, hello. Welcome to a season finale Sports Bowl. You can see next to me, I have Mr. John Newman of Sports Card Nation. And I want to have him on today, just kind of a year-end recap, some of my personal thoughts, and bounce some ideas off of him. John, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I guess I'm honored. I'm the last guest of the year, like the finale. I don't know what the ratings are going to be, but here we are.
If I don't get picked up for next year, I can blame you. So
I almost feel like I should get shot. That always like gets good ratings and like a cliffhanger going into the next season.
I'm game if you are. So it'll be the J.R. Ewing of hobby. Hobby. Well, first of all, thank you for coming on. We shoot the bull all the time, and I just wanted to kind of wrap up the year because we've talked hobby, we've talked business, content creation, and to sum it up without talking to you, I think would only be part of the story. So, I guess from a quick view from you, where was 2022 looking back? I mean, it's kind of went by pretty quickly. You and I met at the National in 2021, and I feel like in some ways it was 10 minutes ago. In some ways it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, time's fine. We must be having fun, Danny. 2022. I mean, let's be real, right? It was sort of a hobby reset, a correction. We've seen prices come down from previous levels. Some people like to spin that as a bad thing. I like to spin it as, hey, this is what happens, the ebb and flows of any kind of industry slash hobby, right? And you sort of knew, if you're in this hobby for the amount of time we are, you sort of knew that was going to happen. And it's a great opportunity, as I've said on my show, to purchase some stuff that maybe before was not in the financial constraints, and now they are. I know that applies to me. And I think the other takeaway from this year is we've seen, a lot of team ups and partnerships and agreements to work together, with companies. And I think we've seen that even in the content creation part of the hobby.
It's funny. I was going to try to list them all. I couldn't even think of the whole list. You couldn't be more right.
Yeah, and then we're doing, shameless plug. We've done it too. We've taken that lead too with the new show Card Menches.
Yes. Thank you for doing the shameless plug. One of us had to do it. Tune into Card Menches every other week on Sports Card Nation and the Card Menches platform, and here on Sports Ball. But from a merger and company combining type of thing, it was very different, I think, in 2020, 2021, where everybody was starting their own thing. Everybody, was doing their own thing. And now I think we're kind of seeing, I don't know if it's the cream rising to the top or, what it is, but people are realizing, some of this is better to work together than to work apart. Is that how you're looking at it?
I think it's that. I think it's a combo thing. I think in some cases it's that, Danny, and I think in other cases it's right survival of the fittest. Right, if we band together, we have hopefully, at least on paper, it should be that way. Smarter people now, more smarter, intelligent people in the room to help make some decisions that are impactful and viable for the brands. I say brands plural because if they're a team up, to continue and thrive. I think you're seeing that even outside the hobby, but obviously this is a hobby show, so I think it's kind of where we're at in the economic point of things.
Yeah, and I guess just to not make this a one-way interview, I really think, from my perspective, that you're right. But I also think it's the collector who got in 20 and 21 is in a weird position. A lot of people that started pre-pandemic, have been through some rises and falls, and it's easier to take things with a grain of salt. If you got in and you paid top prices, I genuinely feel bad for you. You're in a tough financial situation. Those cards are not what they were worth 2 years ago. So, from that position, I have empathy. Now, should you ever invest tens of thousands of dollars without knowing what you're doing? That's a separate conversation. But even people who know what they were doing, and the markets, it's been tough. So, from my perspective, I think the combining of the companies, like you said, some of it is definitely survival of the fittest. But I also think some of it is going to be best for the consumer. Once we got past, I think, the grading challenges where you couldn't get a card graded, now you can pretty much get your cards graded from 3, 4, or more reputable companies, and you can get them back at a far more reasonable time frame, even if prices are still not back to pre-pandemic. So in that case, I think there is some hope for the consumer, and I think we're seeing maybe a little bit of improvement in the hobby, where maybe the hobby got lazy, and it was easy during the pandemic, and now it forced everybody, I think, to run a tighter ship, or to rethink their business model. So that's kind of how I look at the companies merging. Um, Now, from a totally separate standpoint, relationships, you know, getting to see people in person versus, not having the pandemic, talk to me about 2022 for you on a personal level.
Well, yeah, I mean, shows came back in a big way, as you well know. You travel to even more shows than I do, so that's more up your. Well, we're seeing the rise of shows again. We could debate. We might have too many shows now. I guess that's a good problem to have. But we're seeing shows in areas that we haven't seen before. They're getting their first taste of a card show. We're seeing card shows in areas that they've had them before, but at more frequency now. Maybe they were 4 times a year, and now they're 6 or 8 times a year. I mean, even here in Syracuse, which is not a hobby hotbed, truth be told, uh, we're seeing more shows and multiple, including sometimes at the same time. We sometimes have shows where you can hit 2 different shows in one city. Whether it be the New York State Fairgrounds here and the Ramada Hotel at the same time. So definitely, no matter where you live, there's probably an opportunity to attend a show, like you said. And you can't replace. To me, I've always said this, Danny. You can't replace an in-person interaction or transaction, right? Talking with someone face to face,
Even
or
friends, or
buying,
even business.
yeah,
Yeah.
or even buying a card, right? Where you have that card in your hand, you know what it looks like, you know what shape it's in, and you're not flying by to see your pants, waiting for that card to be put in your mailbox. I mean, if you ask me, a choice between buying the cards I buy in person via online or auction, the in person transaction will win all the time. But again, you can't get everything that way, so that's why auctions and auction and selling platforms do so well. Uh,
And actually, that's
as well.
probably a good comment on 2022. I think it's the year maybe the hobby transferred to auctions more than any other year. I mean, the more sellers now offer auctions. It's now a regular way to buy, I think, on far more platforms. And I don't, that's a good point. I don't know if people are talking about that. You were, talking about buying. I hope I'm not spilling a secret here. You're into some boxing right now, so you had talked about getting lots. That is the type of thing, and I'm putting together 57 set. If you're buying lots, I mean that's a great auction item a lot of times. And now, if I go to buy a lot, I have easily 6 to 12 places to look. Is that something that's different than when you were collecting 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think people are, what do you want to call it? Cherry picking. They only want certain cards from a set, and they're like, "What am I going to do with the rest of these?" Right? I'm not putting that particular set together. I'm not, in my case, I'm not really a set collector per se anymore. I used to be. And so that's why you're seeing those lots. You mentioned, it's not a secret. I'll talk about it on my show. I've always been sort of a boxing fan, more the old school days. Uh, Tyson, Sugar Ray Leonard, Hagler's, Hearn, Duran. Before MMA and UFC sort of took the shine away. So I really kind of went back and there's some great vintage lot deals in the boxing space, and been buying some of those. They're almost too cheap not to buy. Some of it I might keep for a person for PC, and a lot. I still do shows as a dealer, so you may see some of that on my table for sale. Yeah, Jack
Yeah, I'm
Johnson.
showing off with terrible lighting here. A Jack Johnson strip card. Um, Vintage boxing, John. I think you're ahead of the game on that. I think that's a great buy. So I hope I didn't ruin it for you. Go get your stuff before everybody watches
No,
this.
and I'm not one of those guys that tries to like keep everything a secret. I mean, it's out there. It's not.
Yeah,
I'm not
you're
breaking.
you're you're a pump and dump, by the way. So everybody, the 2023 version of this, we'll talk about the over sale of boxing cards.
Yeah, I'm getting rid of all those George Carpentier, and people are just eating them all up. So, but no, it's a great, whatever it is. I think we've seen ticket stubs sort of rise, and we can talk about that. There's, I can make an argument that ticket stubs are rarer than cards when you think about, especially on the vintage side of things, back when in the 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, 80s, right? You went to a baseball game or any sporting event. I don't want to just make it baseball. The ticket was just the vessel to get through the turnstile. You put it in your pocket, it get all crumpled up. The end of the day, you come home. What happened to that ticket? It goes in the garbage, right? Your game's over. And how many of those tickets survived, especially the further back you go. So and we're seeing those prices start to increase as those light bulbs go on and people figure that out. Like, I understand, same thing with vintage cards back in the day. Like, my dad came on the show and talked about, you put them in the bike spoke, you threw them against the wall, you put them in your wallet, you put them in your pocket. I understand those took a beating too, but people didn't really throw cards out in the same fashion as the way they threw ticket stubs out. Like, parents might have, when a kid went off to college, like, oh, he won't be needing these anymore. I'm gonna clean the garage out or his room out. That's that sort of story. But a ticket stub was really disposable once the game was over and you got through the gates, right? People didn't really keep them. Now they're more so with records, and debuts and different things like that. But some of those vintage era tickets, and not even that far back, but even more recent 70s and 80s, people threw them out. I went to games in the 80s, and I don't have those tickets anymore. So we didn't keep them. And so I think that's sort of a market. And then, they get graded, right? And again, they get beat
Now
up.
they've gone
No one
digital.
is getting it. What?
And now they've pretty much gone digital.
Yeah. Yep. So they're harder to, that's true but then you can always, a little tip too, you can always ask for the hard copy at the arena or stadium,
But to
especially
your but to your
if it's a
point,
significant.
the population's far less.
Yeah, and again, when you went through the gate, right? When you attended a sporting event, you didn't like keep that ticket nice and mint and just
It
held in your right. What
was
went
in
in your
your
back
wallet,
pocket,
folded up, and
crumpled up in your pocket. So even to take it a step further, if you can get them in really good shape, even all the more better, right? And I just think it's just far less of those left than cards. And I think we've seen some record sales even on ticket stubs recently as well.
um, real quick, just on 2022. I want to talk about a little bit of fun each of us have. Do you mind if I talk about some purchases and kind of recap 2022?
Yeah, no, that's what it's about, right?
Okay, well, you have purchased. If you hadn't already made public, I wouldn't talk about it. But it is an icon in the sport, and kudos to you for landing one of your personal grails. And for those of you who don't know, this was a personal card to John. It's the 48-49 Leaf Jackie. And
Yeah, for those watching, I got a little glare
well,
going on, but let's
I'll
see.
tell you what. I'll let you tell people about it because I want to go grab my thing that I forgot to grab real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah. For most people know, I think that know me anyway, that Jackie Robinson's always been my idol as a kid. You know, growing up in Brooklyn, New York. Obviously, I never saw him play. He passed away a month before I was even born. But if you're born and raised in Brooklyn, you know about the Brooklyn Dodgers. You know about Jackie Robinson and what his significance was, not just on the field, but off the field in you know when it comes to social issues. And just was a guy that you know I learned about. You know, became someone I admired and you know, always kind of collected them. And as I've said many times, right, I sort of kept kicking that can down the road when it came to the Leaf rookie. Like, you know, I've had, you know, I'm not going to, you know, I have myself to blame. I had 2, 3, 4 opportunities to buy that card a lot earlier than 2022 at a lot less of a price than it did cost me in 2022. I always just kind of punted or I'll get it next time. I'll get it at the next show. And you know, it was always tomorrow, right? It's like procrastinating. Like I'll do it tomorrow. And you keep putting it off. It's always tomorrow. And then finally, you know, enough tomorrows happen and that price obviously goes up. And like you said, it's an iconic card. You don't have to be a Jackie fan to know, you know, about that card. It's a card
And
you see.
and in reverse, you don't have to be a huge baseball card fan to love that card. That's the great thing
Yeah,
about that card.
yeah. And so I said this year, you know, I was in a financial spot to, you know, I wasn't really going to go down. You know, we talk about prices coming down this year. There are certain cards that sort of are, I don't want to say bulletproof, might be too strong a word, but sort of resistant or resilient to that price correction. This is one of those cards. So I just decided like, you're either going to get it this year, John, you know, or you're probably just not going to do it. And so I just decided this would be the year. So that was my you know I bought other stuff obviously, but that was the big purchase, if you will. And I get asked now that I own it, you know, what's the next Grail card on the list? And people think I'm crazy when I say this. I really don't. I have other cards I don't have yet that I'd love to add to the PC, but really none of them fit the description of Grail in the same
And they
way
didn't happen in
that card
2022.
did.
So,
Yeah. So
well, I think one of the reasons I'm going to make a point here is this was my favorite thing that I picked up this year. This was the 1966 World Series from Baltimore, hence Sports Balt. This was the clinching game for the Orioles' first World Series ever in Baltimore. But there's one other little fact on here. And I don't know if you can see that, but it was Sandy Koufax's last game in a major league uniform. So he didn't play in the game, but this was his last official Major League Baseball game in uniform. So for me, I'm a huge Koufax fan. I PC a little bit. You can see over my shoulder, autographed picture of him. So for me, the dual sentimentality of my home team winning their first World Series, and then also one of my idols, and then the circumstances around Koufax retiring to have that last game in uniform. This was by far my favorite 2022 purchase. But my point of this is both of us chose things that had personal connections. Neither one of us
yeah,
said the most money I made this year on a card was this. Or, you know, the thing I think my best investment, you know, is this. We both answered with personal connections. And to me, I think that is one of the reasons we get along. One of the reasons we get along with other people in the hobby is the passion and the true love has to be there, even though you still, do card shows. I still work as a broker, and we buy and sell for business, but we couldn't do it without this underlying thing that says, all that aside, here's my favorite thing for the whole freaking year, and it's personal and it's mine. You're not showing me sealed wax you sell at shows. There's not that emotional attachment. So I just wanted to say, I think that's crucial to enjoy the hobby. If anybody's looking, and we're going to talk about this later, but if anybody's looking forward to 2023 and in the future, or bringing children or other people into the hobby, it has to start with passion. Collect players you like, collect teams you like. Forget the high dollar stuff. Just start learning, what you like, and take it from there. So that kind of moves us right into future hobby ideas and predictions. So I'm going to take a different angle. Do you have a kind of a personal collecting goal for 2023, whether it be a strategy, a player, a card, anything you're looking forward to 2023?
Just value, right? Just kind of like what I'm doing with boxing, right? Just to me, it's underpriced for what's out there. I'm not saying that it's super rare stuff or anything like that, but just some great value as prices do come down. Even tickets. You showed your 66 Orioles ticket significance on multiple fronts, right? Things that you can, uh, you know have a so I want to give proper credit to who said it, but I can't remember. But they basically said, like, if you couldn't sell any more cards, stuff you'd still be happy with owning, right? And I tried to
It's a
do
great
that.
phrase.
For me, I use the national, obviously, to promote some of our content creation, meet people, right? It's become a social event as well as a card show. But I always use the national. I kind of save up. I'll actually, I've talked about this on my show, Danny. I'll actually 3 to 4 months out from the national. So here in about 2 to 3 months from now, I'll pump the brakes and stop buying stuff. It
Yep.
sounds weird, and you'll say, why? How are you a collector or not buy anything? I'm going to start, you know, saving money up, because what I like to do is go to the national and buy a couple, if you want to call them four-figure cards that check, some boxes on my list. For me, my PCs become Hall of Fame graded rookies. And obviously, there's a lot still on my list because I'm not just baseball. I'll do that with football, even basketball, and
Well,
hockey. So,
and even boxing, obviously.
yeah. So I like to pick off, 2 to 3 cards that fit that description of, four figures or close to it. Obviously graded copies. And I use the national to sort of plan to acquire those 2 to 3 cards every year. Kind of slow the buying the few months leading up to it. Someone might say, John, it's going to cost you maybe a little bit more buying it at the national because dealers are trying to offset their traveling expenses, lodging, gas, airfare, whatever the case. There's still, you can still get some great deals. I've bought some great cards at nationals that I don't feel were inflated because it was at that event. So, again, going back to that, could have I bought, a card online and had it shipped to me? Sure, right? And I do that as you do and most people do. But there's something about buying a significant card in person and seeing it, and even graded, right? You can look at two graded cards that are both fours or fives, and they look different. They might be graded the same, but they look different. And so seeing them in person and getting to look at them and flip them over, and then just whether you haggle with the dealer to make the purchase or pass and look for another one that along the same lines. I mean, that's the fun, right? And to do it in person, you can't really put a price on that.
Absolutely. In the spirit of the hobby, if you feel comfortable, I'd like to support some local card shops in my area. To be honest with you, I don't even know how many card shops you have within 20 minutes or so.
Not not many, Danny. We have really two. We have one that's about 15 minutes away. He's been there a long time. To tell you the truth, how long he's been there, he was operating when I had my card store myself in the 90s. He's still there. Not a fan of the proprietor, the owner, so I do not really
So let's go to the
go.
next one.
And but I got to give credit. I'm a credit where credit's due. Guy's been there. What is it now? 30 something years, right? The other one's a newer one. It's called G&G. Uh, Sports cards, and it's sort of a sports card store inside a furniture gallery. So they had the furniture place first, and the two gentlemen there, Anthony and Josh, say, "Hey, man, we love cards, and we got some extra space. Let's make a store." And they're doing pretty well. They've been on the show some months back to highlight it. They do trade nights. I don't get there a ton, but I do every once in a while.
And
Try to
by the
stop
way,
in.
guys, just to clarify, John means cards for trade nights. Please do not bring in your dining room tables.
I think they do that too.
They're not trading. The furniture is not for trade.
That happens in another part of the building.
Yeah. So and a couple shows. Have you committed, or do you know if you're doing any shows this year?
Yeah, we do. I do what's called the fairground show. There are about 6 of them, 4 to 6 a year. The next one's not till March, so I got some downtime when it comes to setting up. So I won't be. Most of my sales now will come in the online form. I am bulk subbing now for SGC, so that might fill the space between card show to the next card show type of deal. But yeah, my next one's not till March, and then they pick up again, and I about 4 to 6 a year. I used to travel more, Danny, in my younger age. I used to go to Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. I even went to Ohio to set up as a dealer. But that's not as easy as it used to be. In those days, I was really doing cards full time for the most part, which I don't do it full time now. So I don't necessarily need to do those kind of things. It's fun, but it gets a little more difficult as you get older. So.
Well, John is so old. He was around before the Beatles, not the band, but the life form. So, no, I'm kidding. You had a big birthday this year, so we go into 2023 as a fresh generation. So I think you officially are close to cheaper movie tickets and sitting down.
Well, listen, I'm self-depreciating, so I can, one of my birthday gifts this year was from my wife. I think she got more of a kick out of it than I did, was an AARP membership. I'm 50 years old. I want to I always thought you had to be a little bit older for that, but apparently they've lowered their standards and
Well, what makes it funny is, and what makes it funny, guys, is his wife is 27. You have no idea. Like she's getting a kick out of it.
I'm hoping my next one's 27.
Right now, lovely girl. So as we look at kind of how we know each other and it's content creation, and we have a lot of friends in the content creation area. I'm going to throw out an idea. Somebody who's launching new shows and is on shows. Is there too much content creation out there?
Man, that's such I get asked that. I don't want to say often, but every now and then it's.
I thought it was a good question. I thought it was a good question.
It is a good. It is a good question. But I always say, who am I to say, right? There's more today than when I started 4 years ago. I mean, that's a given. I think the proof's in the pudding, Danny. I mean, if you put out good content, people will find it. People will tell other people. You'll get those downloads and views, and and I get asked every so often. You probably do too. From someone thinking about starting a show brand new. And I always say the same two pieces of advice, right? Be yourself, have fun. I'm actually three. And when you first start, don't put too much emphasis on those views and downloads because where Sports Card Nation is today, 4 years after when I launched it, is frankly two different worlds and two different spots. And didn't know it was gonna go like that. And so as long as you're having fun, don't put too much emphasis, especially initially, on the views. You got to build up that viewership and be yourself. People can tell when you're not being yourself, and for me, it's a big turnoff if I'm listening or watching somebody. And it should, I'll use funny sound bites and some
Sure.
shtick, but if it's all, they're just playing a role. I mean, that's why I watch TV for if I want to watch actors master their craft, right?
First of
Or
all,
go to the movie theater.
James Lipton, I have his fat head on my wall. So,
Well, Danny, thank you very much. But you know what I mean? So for me, again, everyone's different. Some people may like that, right?
Yep.
It's we have train wreck folks that just love negativity and will slow down and see, how bad the accident is, the damage. Can they see if someone's hurt or that's always been like that for a very long time, and that won't change. But for me, I just like people who are genuine. That passion for the hobby shines through, and I have that. I think you sort of gravitate to people who are similar to you. I think that's just natural human nature.
which is why I think somehow we managed to hang up the phone at midnight, and we are recording this at 7 a.m. on the West Coast, if you're counting. So I want to thank you. I'm going to throw you to the green room for a minute while I get a little emotional and do my personal goodbye, and then I saved you all the blue M&Ms, so enjoy those, and I will see you in a minute. But John Newman, my 2022 would not be complete without you. So I want to thank you for being a friend. I want to thank you for going on this journey of card benches together, and just for being a good sounding board and a good friend. So thank you very much, and appreciate it.
Well, that's mutual, man. Like that stuff, that's got to be a two-way street. Like I appreciate that, and I feel exactly the same way.
All right. Well, like I said, blue M&Ms in the green room, and I will see you in a second. Thanks for hopping on the year end. And now I just wanted to talk for a second. This has been a crazy year for me personally, professionally. I have had been very blessed to be in a position to do this full time as a job. I'm blessed that after a year of battling, my wife could not be healthier, and it moves me to tears to think about that. But we are blessed and very lucky. And for the friends I've made in the hobby, and I'm going to forget some people, and I said I wasn't going to name anybody, but it is worth it. Let me start with the local card shops because I think they're the heartbeat of the industry. To the Dugout Zone and Great Moments and Robbie's and Bel Air Sports Cards and everybody who I hang out with on a regular basis around town. To my family for supporting this crazy journey, and the ups and the downs and the hours. And when you work with people in all time zones, you end up on calls at all hours, and you end up stepping out of soccer games and doing what you have to. I apologize. Let me, I'm just going to run down the list. This is no order. To Ezra Collectible, Catherine and Magpie, John and Sumin at Center Stage, Al at Waxstat, Tony, Derek, Jason, everybody at Heritage, Ray Schulte, Joe Drellick, Dr. Jim Beckett, Mike Moynihan, John Keating, Ryan Nolan, Tony Oz, Jeremy Lee, Wiz the Collector, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a whole bunch of people, but the point is I have more friends in this hobby than I'm going to remember, and I'm lucky for that. So I'm excited for 2023. I am happy to see 2022 behind us in some ways. I think it kicked me on the ass on the way out as my pipes broke, and that was, I think, 2022 saying goodbye. So we are a couple days from New Year's. I want to wish everybody a belated, happy, and healthy holiday. I want to thank just everybody for this past year, and definitely, guys, looking forward to 2023. I am out of Baltimore, so almost any show around here you'll catch me at. But anybody who knows me knows. Feel free to reach out, DM, email. Always happy to take a call or chat about what we love. So thank you, and apologize for getting emotional, but this is important to me, and I'm very blessed to do what I love. So have a good 2022, those last couple days, and we'll see you next year. And once again, I don't do outros.